Okay, let's jump right into our deep dive today. We're looking at Leviticus chapter 6
Right?
and exploring some of these really specific ancient instructions. It's about handling sin, making restitution, and, well, the whole system of offerings.
Absolutely. It gets very detailed very quickly. And interestingly, it kicks off not just with, general rules, but specifically addressing wrongs done between people, sins against your neighbor.
Okay, so what kind of wrongs are we talking about here? What does it actually list?
Well, the text mentions things like deceiving someone about property they entrusted you, or maybe outright stealing from them, cheating them,
Mm-hmm.
finding something someone lost, and then lying, saying you never saw it,
Hmm.
or even swearing falsely about some interaction you had with them. Basically, it covers these breaches of trust, dishonesty in day-to-day dealings.
And the consequence for doing one of these things, it's not just a social faux pas, right?
No, not at all. The text says you become guilty before the Lord. So the wrongdoing against your neighbor is simultaneously an offense in the divine realm. It links the two.
Right, that connection is key.
Hmm.
So how do you fix it? How do you, make it right according to these rules?
It's a process. Step one is making full restitution to the person you wronged. You have to return exactly what was taken or what was lost or withheld, the full value.
But just returning it isn't quite enough, is it? I think there's an extra bit.
You're right, there is. On top of returning the full value, you have to add a penalty, 1/5 of the value.
1/5, so 20%.
Exactly, a 20% add-on. So using a simple example, if you took something worth, say, 5 shekels, you return the 5 plus an extra shekel.
That 20% feels, well, significant. What's the thinking there, do you suppose? It's more than just replacement cost.
Yeah, it seems to be. It adds this punitive element, or maybe compensatory. It recognizes the hassle, the breach of trust, maybe the lost opportunity for the person who was wronged.
Mm.
It definitely makes the wrongdoer pay a real cost beyond just giving back what they shouldn't have had in the first place.
Mm.
It really emphasizes that the damage isn't just the item, it's the relationship, the trust.
And this whole thing, giving back the item and the extra 20%, it has to happen at a specific time.
Yes, the text is very clear on that. It says it must be done on the day the guilty person presents their guilt offering to the priest.
Ah, the guilt offering. Okay, so that's the next piece. Tell us about that.
Right, so that's the part directed towards God, addressing that divine dimension of the guilt. You bring a ram from your flock to the priest,
Okay.
and it has specific requirements.
Hmm.
It has to be without defect, and it needs to be of the proper value for this type of offering.
And the priest's role, once you've done the restitution and brought the ram.
The priest performs the ritual, makes atonement for you before the Lord for these specific actions. And the text suggests that through this complete process, fixing things with your neighbor and bringing the offering, you'll be forgiven.
Hmm.
It really weaves together that horizontal person-to-person repair with the vertical person-to-God repair. So after laying out those rules for sins against neighbors, the chapter sort of shifts gears. It moves into these detailed regulations for the different kinds of offerings that were part of their regular worship.
And it starts with the burnt offering, right? And there's a huge focus on the fire.
A massive focus.
Oh.
It says it multiple times.
Yeah.
The fire on the altar has to be kept burning continuously. It must never go out.
Never.
Never. And the burnt offering itself, it stays on the altar hearth all night, burning until morning.
So this constant fire, what does the priest have to do in the morning then with the altar and, the remains?
There's a specific morning routine.
Uh-huh.
First, the priest puts on special linen clothes,
Mhm.
even linen undergarments. These seem to be designated just for this sacred work at the altar.
Okay.
Then they remove the ashes, what's left of the offering that burned all night, and place them right there beside the altar.
Ashes beside the altar wearing the linen? Then what?
This is where it gets interesting. After putting the ashes beside the altar, the priest has to take off those linen clothes, put on different clothes.
Oh.
Yeah. And then carry the ashes outside the camp, but specifically to a place that's considered ceremonially clean.
Why the change of clothes, do you think? That seems deliberate.
It probably marks a transition, doesn't it? From working directly in the most sacred space, handling the offering's remains, to moving outside that immediate holy zone.
Right.
The linen seems reserved for the altar itself. The other clothes are for tasks outside, even if related, like disposing of the ashes. It reinforces those boundaries between sacred and, well, less sacred or common space, and taking the ashes outside to a clean place shows that even waste disposal from the sacred needs careful handling.
Makes sense. And the fire itself, all this ash removal doesn't mean it goes out.
Nope, still burning. That's still the priest's job.
Hmm.
Every morning, add more firewood, arrange the new burnt offering on top, and also burn the fat from the fellowship offerings on it. And again, the text hammers it home. The fire must be kept burning continuously. Don't let it go out. It feels like a symbol of, I don't know, constant presence or dedication.
Hmm.
Then, moving on from the burnt offering and its fire, we get rules for the grain offering.
Okay, the grain offering, this is one brought by the people, right?
Yeah,
Aaron's sons, the priests, bring it before the Lord near the altar.
exactly. And the priest takes a specific part of it, just a handful of the fine flour and the oil, plus all the incense that came with it. This handful is called the memorial portion.
The memorial portion, and that gets burned.
Yes, that specific handful is burned on the altar. It's described as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. It's like the representative part that goes up to God.
Okay, so if a handful is burned, what happens to the rest? Because a grain offering could be quite a bit more than a handful.
Good point. The rest is actually designated for Aaron and his sons, the priests. That's their share. They get to eat the remainder.
Ah, okay, so they eat it. Are there rules about how or where?
Oh, yes, very specific. It must be eaten without yeast, no leaven, and it has to be eaten in a holy place. The text specifies the courtyard of the tent of meeting.
No yeast in the courtyard. Got it.
And it has to be baked without yeast, too, not just eaten that way.
Now, the text calls this part for the priests most holy, just like the sin and guilt offerings. What does that practically mean? What's the significance of most holy?
That designation, most holy, signifies the highest level of sacredness. It means it's set apart exclusively for divine purposes, or, in this case, for those who minister directly in the sacred space, the priests. It applies stricter rules for handling and consumption compared to things that are just holy.
So only priests, only in the holy place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it can't be treated like ordinary food. It carries this intense sanctity.
And this is their regular food source, in a way.
It's described as their regular share, yes, for all generations. Any male descendant of Aaron can eat it. And there's that fascinating line, whatever touches these most holy offerings will itself become holy.
Right. That idea of holiness being almost contagious.
Exactly. It suggests this inherent power or quality in sacred items that can transfer on contact. It really underlines why such care and reverence were needed when handling anything designated most holy. Then Leviticus 6 describes what seems like a special type of grain offering.
Oh, different from the regular one.
Yeah, it's specifically linked to the anointing of the high priest, Aaron, and later his successors.
So this is an offering brought on the day a priest is anointed into that high office.
Precisely. It's called a regular grain offering, but it has its own unique rules just for this occasion, for the priests themselves. It's a specific amount, a tenth of an ephah of fine flour, and it's offered in two parts, half in the morning, half in the evening.
And how's it prepared? Is it like the other one?
It's prepared with oil, cooked on a griddle, has to be well mixed, and it's presented broken in pieces. And like the memorial part of the people's offering, its purpose is to be an aroma pleasing to the Lord.
Who makes this offering in future generations?
The son who succeeds his father as the anointed high priest. It's tied to taking up that office.
Okay, but here's the big difference, right? With the regular grain offering, the priests ate most of it. What happens to this one, the priest's own anointing offering?
You caught the key distinction. This specific offering, brought by the anointed priest for himself, is considered the Lord's regular share, and it must be burned completely.
Completely. None of it is eaten.
None. And this leads into a general rule stated right after. Every grain offering of a priest shall be burned completely. It must not be eaten.
Ah. So there's a clear line. Offerings brought by the people, a portion goes to the priests. Offerings brought by a priest for himself are entirely for God, entirely burned.
Exactly. It really highlights that distinction. Maybe it symbolizes that the priests are sustained by the community's devotion, represented by their offerings, rather than by offerings they make purely on their own behalf. And finally, the chapter wraps up with regulations for the sin offering, again, directed to Aaron and his sons.
Okay, the sin offering, used for usually unintentional sins, often things impacting ritual purity, right? Where's it dealt with?
It's slaughtered before the Lord in the same place they slaughter the burnt offering. And again, we see that designation. It is most holy.
Okay, most holy. So following the pattern, who gets to eat this one?
The priest who actually offers it, he's the one who eats it. And the location rule applies again. It must be eaten in a holy place, specifically the courtyard of the tent of meeting.
And that contagious holiness thing seems to apply here too. The text mentions contact.
It does, very similar to the grain offering. Whatever touches the flesh of the sin offering becomes holy. And if any blood happens to spatter onto a garment, that garment has to be washed. but washed in a holy place. Again, keeping the cleansing within the sacred zone.
And then there are these rules about the cooking pots. That seems incredibly specific.
It really does, doesn't it? And it shows the level of detail involved. If the priest cooks the sin offering meat in a clay pot, that pot has to be broken afterward.
Broken, just thrown out.
Seems so. But if it's cooked in a bronze pot, that pot can be reused, but it must be thoroughly scoured and rinsed with water first.
Why the difference? Clay versus bronze.
Well, the thinking is likely about porosity. Clay is porous. It could absorb some of the blood or the sacred fats from the most holy offering in a way that can't be fully cleaned. It becomes permanently affected, perhaps.
I see.
Bronze, being non-porous, can be effectively scoured clean and reused for sacred purposes. It's just another layer showing how seriously they took ritual purity and preventing any improper mixing of the sacred and the common down to the cookware.
Fascinating. And who among the priest's families can eat this?
Any male in a priest's family is permitted to eat it. And the text reminds us again, it is most holy. But there's one really crucial exception right at the end of these sin offering rules.
An exception to the priests eating it? What is it?
Yes, it says any sin offering where the blood is not just sprinkled on the outer altar, but is actually brought into the tent of meeting itself to make atonement inside the holy place.
Okay, so a higher level of ritual.
Exactly. Perhaps for more serious or communal sins. If the blood goes inside the tent, then that sin offering must not be eaten by anyone.
So what happens to it then?
It has to be burned completely, just like the priest's personal grain offering.
Wow. So the destination of the blood determines the fate of the entire offering. Inside the tent means fully burned. Outside means the priest eats a portion.
That seems to be the principle. Bringing the blood into the inner sanctuary elevates the offering somehow, makes it entirely consecrated to God, beyond human consumption, even for the priests.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive into Leviticus 6. We've gone from dealing with cheating your neighbor, that whole restitution, plus 20% penalty, and the guilt offering.
Right, the ethical and ritual combined.
All the way to these incredibly detailed instructions for the main offerings. The burnt offering with its perpetual fire and the ash disposal routine.
The linen clothes, the change of clothes.
Yeah, and the grain offering, the memorial portion burned, the rest eaten by priests in the courtyard. Unless it's the priest's own offering, then it's all burned.
And that contagious holiness.
And the sin offering, who eats it where, the rules about washing blood-spattered clothes, breaking clay pots, but scouring bronze ones, and that final critical exception based on where the blood is used.
It's a really dense chapter, covering a lot of ground, from practical ethics to high ritual.
It is. And when you look at all this detail together, I mean, everything from financial penalties for lying to managing altar ashes to pot scrubbing rules, what does this whole intricate system suggest about the worldview behind it?
Well, it really seems to underscore this deep interconnectedness, doesn't it? Between how you treat other people, maintaining ritual purity, and your relationship with the divine. They aren't separate boxes. This sheer level of detail, this precision demanded in everyday actions and in sacred rituals, it suggests a world where the sacred isn't just confined to the temple, it permeates everything. And maintaining order, both social order between people and maybe cosmic order with God, require this meticulous attention to both how you act ethically and how you perform the rituals correctly. It leaves you thinking, what does this intense focus on, both correcting interpersonal wrongs and adhering precisely to sacred procedures, tell us about what they valued most? It seems both were absolutely crucial and deeply intertwined.